Hi, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Cat Chat. It has been a minute since I've posted a video, but it will be worth the wait because I have a special treat today. This is my first interview, by the way, and I have with me my friend Catherine, who has spent 7 seasons in Antarctica in 3 different stations. So she's going to talk to us about all of the ins and outs of doing such a thing and the good, the bad, and the ugly. So if there's things that you're more interested in than others, or you want to go back and review an area, you can check out the description for the timestamp. So you can go back and check out certain areas, or if you're really particularly interested in the social life, you can go right to that. Don't forget to like and subscribe. You know, that helps me out a bunch. So, without further ado, I'm going to bring on my good friend Catherine Smith, and let's see what life is like on the ice. All right, Catherine, welcome. Thank you
Hi.
so much for being here today.
Yes, of course. Happy.
All right. Okay, so first we're going to start with some practical and logistical questions, and then we'll get into the really good, juicy stuff.
Sounds good.
All right. So tell us, what's the hiring process like in doing something like this? Like, what kind of physical condition does one have to be in to even consider something like this? And like, did you have to pass a physical? What's that process like?
Yeah, so I mean, first you apply for ideally is the job that you want, but really if you want to go down there, you can apply for everything, anything. Um and the hiring process, so they give out contracts for like primary contracts and alternate contracts. So they fill their positions. They kind of have to have a backup position known as an alternate, just because there is a pretty intense physical requirement to going down, due to the limitations of access to like medical care and stuff down when you're on the ice. So yeah, for it kind of depends on what contract you get, and for like which season and which station. There are some basic requirements that are all the same, universal, and then there's ones that are kind of more specific and targeted. So, kind of the more universal ones would be, you have to do something called physically qualifying, or like going through a PQ is what they call it. So you go through a PQ process, which involves like doing blood work, which will look at like your cholesterol. They take your blood type. There's kind of everything. You do a lot of blood work, and then after that, you get an EKG. And specifically for winter, if you're staying for the winter, they do a gallbladder ultrasound. And I think that was due to someone having gallstones and there was a medical emergency at one point in time. And now it's just standard practice that everybody does that for the winter. And then you also have to do like a dental qualification. So you go to the dentist, they take like gum measurements, look for any cavities, and all of the basic stuff like the appointments, EKG, the blood work is all covered by the company since it is a hiring requirement. If you do have any extra work that needs to be done, like fillings, your wisdom teeth coming out, stuff like that, you have to cover the expense. And then once everything is all done, you submit your paperwork, and then they clear you for deployment. And at
Mm,
that point, you're considered good to go, and so your status would be cleared. You fill out your paperwork. There's a background check. It can get pretty intense, and I think in the beginning, people kind of underestimate it a little bit, and it can be a quite like long process, because if you submit your paperwork, they say like, oh, your cholesterol is too high, or you need to get dental work done. You have to do it all, set the appointments, get it all done, and then resubmit your paperwork. And it's kind of more or less a first come first serve basis in terms of like who gets their paperwork done on time is more likely to go down. So
I
I've
see.
always been very like uh, aggressive with trying to get my stuff done as soon as I can, which with all the separate appointments, can be kind of a struggle here. I know that at least in Washington, I'm not sure if it's nationwide, that in order to get like a gallbladder ultrasound or an EKG, I first have to go to like my primary care provider and they have to prescribe that. Whereas
Yeah.
like if I could just go and get it done, that would cut out an extra appointment for me. So
Yeah.
um, I think sometimes people are surprised at the amount of time it will take.
Yeah.
And yeah, winter is like an extra step just because you are isolated for a longer period of time. Um, and with like the summer seasons, you know, you're down there, there's at one of the stations, it's larger, they have flights every month, sometimes multiple times a month. And then over the winter, there could be a period of up to like, you know, 8 months, 9 months or something without a flight at all. So um, obviously they'll want a more intense check if you're staying for a longer period of time or isolated.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah.
And so, what kind of what was your first job there? Like, do you have options for jobs? Do they say you're doing this and you don't have a choice? And I know you've had several jobs over the different seasons. Which ones did you like best?
Ooh, that's tough. So I first started out, I've kind of hopped job to job, which is pretty common, I think, for people going down there. Most, it used to be at least, that most people started out kind of at a base tier job, being, we call them, there's slang for everything down there, of course, but it's a steward in the kitchen, kind of a dishwasher, basically. And that was my first job. And it's basically just a foot in the door. You know, it's you're working hard. It's probably the hardest job I've had in terms of, you know, their hours, how physical it is. It's very demanding. And just kind of being down there is exhausting. So a lot of people start out in that position. And it's interesting what you, once you get down to Antarctica, you know, it doesn't really matter what position you start in. You kind of network, get to see all the different jobs that are available. You can do a lot of like volunteering in other departments and spend time like getting to know what each department looks like, what the jobs look like, and what you'd be interested in. And for the jobs that you don't necessarily have qualifications for, like back home, I would say that matters a lot less down there because it's such a unique experience going down there, and there's so many challenges with just deploying down to Antarctica itself and the living conditions and working conditions of like, you know, there's a set amount of people that you're basically stuck with, and it can be it can cause, you know, some problems if you're not used to that environment or you don't work well in that environment.
Yeah.
So I think they would prefer to hire somebody that has less experience in the position, but maybe more experience in that environment.
Yeah, that
So,
makes sense.
yeah, which led to, so I started out as a dishwasher. And then I went into, and that was at McMurdo, the largest Antarctic station down there. Um, and then I went to the South Pole and I was still a steward there. And then I transitioned, a position opened up for the winter at the South Pole, and stayed and transitioned into supply and logistics there, which also involved kind of working with waste, like basically the station garbage man. It's a lot. It sounds like an unpleasant job, but honestly, it's been one of my favorites. And
Oh,
everything is
interesting.
frozen, so
Yeah.
you're basically just putting stuff in cardboard boxes and making sure that it's safe for transit off the continent since we ship all the trash out. Um,
Oh,
and
where does it get shipped to, by the way? Do you know?
yeah, so McMurdo and the South Pole, which are kind of like in the middle of the continent, they ship their trash out back to the United States, on like a cargo vessel. And some of the garbage goes to California, some of like the recycling goes to Washington, and then the hazardous waste. I believe they just got a new contract, but that goes like to a third company that deals with that. So, and with the peninsula at Palmer, it's it's treated a little bit differently. Like the rules there are a little different because they don't have planes that fly in and out. They put it on just on vessels right away. So each station kind of has a unique way of processing their trash. Yeah, but
Okay.
um,
Interesting.
yeah, and
Hmm.
then I went into solid waste at McMurdo, which is just like picking up town boxes of trash, working in, a small team, um, and using like heavy equipment to basically load it into shipping containers essentially. And then I just recently got back at the end of October from the peninsula, Palmer Station, and over there I was a hazardous waste technician, which
Oh, okay.
is a lot more of the like paperwork side of things, I would say, than I'm used to in the other positions. And it involves like, classifying what stuff is what hazardous material and how it's supposed to be shipped out and handled, adding like codes, filling out, because you need to fill out all this international like regulatory paperwork to send it out. So it's a lot more of that. But there is the like physically loading um, stuff into containers aspect to it too, as well.
Okay. And are there different pay grades for those positions? I mean, we don't really like what's pay like there? You don't have to say what your amount is or if you
Yeah.
don't want to, but is it I mean, I guess you don't have living expenses there, right?
Right.
So any pay that you get is like kind of gravy?
Yeah, it's I mean you don't pay for like room and board or food or any of the flights. Everything is taken care of for you, but you're paying for if you want to buy like souvenirs, those are really popular. If you want to buy like treats at the store, uh you can choose to not spend any money, therefore you do get paid less than you would like stateside.
Of
Um
course.
but I think for the experience itself, I certainly thought it was worth it.
Yeah.
And yeah, each job I've had, I've tried to kind of um, go up a little bit in like the things and responsibilities, and with that comes like more pay. But I would say that oftentimes people have this expectation that they're like going to get paid the same, but I think it's pretty reasonable to have, you know, less pay for more cost covered and this great experience.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so tell me, what made you decide to go in the first place? Like who wakes up and says, I'm going to go to the most brutal weather place on the planet?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, I'm definitely a cold weather kind of gal, so there's that.
Oh, okay. That's good.
But yeah, I first heard about it through my brother. He had friends that went down back in like 2011, and then he went down himself, and it was just kind of in the back of my mind. And he spoke so highly of his experience that I was intrigued. So my first season was 2019. I decided to go down in that steward position, just, you know, no idea what I wanted to do, just kind of went down there. I was given an alternate contract initially, which it kind of seems like, I would have wanted a primary contract, but you'd be surprised at the amount of people that, the process is so intense to go down there that a number of people end up not qualifying or getting their paperwork done in time, and it allows them to pull from the other pile of, people that have their paperwork done. So, yeah, I got chosen to go down as an alternate, and it really was the best choice, I think. And just the new experiences drew me in. I'd never
Mm,
experienced anything like that, and I
mm,
hadn't worked or lived anywhere outside of Seattle. So
yeah. Oh, amazing. And then, so what do you do between seasons? You know, we've had 7 seasons there. So what do you do in your off time when you come back to the States or do you travel or?
yeah, I tend to. It's been a mix of things, I would say, because I have gone down like during COVID. And so when I came back home, it was still during COVID, and that kind of set some limitations, right? So usually what I end up doing is I work from anywhere from like, 6 months to the longest time I've been down there has been 14 months. And so I'll
Mm, wow.
have like money saved up. I usually do a trip or two afterwards, and then a period of unemployment and a contract set up to go back down at some point in time in the next couple of months. So I do take some time off for myself after traveling, just because it is, you work 6 days a week there. You're contracted for a minimum of 54 hours a week. You don't get paid overtime. Like, if you have to work more, you have to work more. So it can get exhausting. And by the end of 14 months, I was definitely ready for a break. So
I'll bet.
yeah.
I'll bet. And so how old when you first went, and what is the age range of people there?
Ooh, the good question. I would say so. I was, gosh, what was I? 23. I just think
Wow.
24. Yeah. So, and then it was interesting because I would say there was a bigger age gap pre-COVID, because during COVID, they really had to tighten the requirements, because older people, people that smoked, people that were just like less generally healthy or in less good shape, were at higher risk for complications from COVID, especially in the beginning. Um,
Hmm.
and the Antarctic program scaled back significantly during COVID, but didn't stop altogether. So uh, that ruled out a large number of older participants that may have been going down for 20 years, and then all of a sudden they didn't qualify. So I would say there's people there that are late 60s, but since COVID, it's gotten a little bit younger. I'd say usually people are in their 30s, late 20s.
Mm.
Early
Okay.
30s is probably the most popular age to go down. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And so how do you prepare mentally and physically for something like this? Like, were you scared when the first time you went? I mean, I'm
Yeah.
sure subsequent seasons you knew what to expect. That first season, were you like,
I don't think I knew exactly how to prepare. I don't think you really can the first time you go down, just because it's such a crazy experience that I don't know. I certainly could not grasp anything about like what I was stepping into until you get there. But um I think just knowing, it's good to have an idea of like what seasons, and how long you're willing to go down for. But my second season that I went down, during COVID, I had only signed up for the summer and like a short period of time, and I ended up signing on for a winter at the South Pole, and it turned into 14 months. So you can go in with this mindset, but like kind of being open to if you want to stay for longer, maybe, or just like, but it all changes once you get down there.
yeah,
And I would, again, like, I don't think there's any sort of physically like preparing for it, outside of passing the physical qualification exams.
right.
And like, there's quite a number of people that get disqualified because of like their cholesterol, and then they have
Oh
to
yeah,
go try and lower it, fix it, and then come back. So
yeah, that makes sense. And so, what do you take with you to some place like that?
oh,
Do they provide you with a packing list? Are there particular things that you can't bring? Like they say, do not ever bring this to the ice or
mhm.
anything like that.
Yeah, they do provide a packing list. I would say it's the pretty much the same packing list for all three stations, more or less. McMurdo and the South Pole are a lot colder than Palmer. Palmer is on the peninsula, and you access it via a vessel through Punta Arenas, in Chile, and it's a lot wetter there. But so they provide ECW gear, which is extreme cold weather gear. So
Let
when
me
you're,
show. I'm going to pull up
yeah,
a picture of that. Actually, we have that to share on the screen here. So, do you want to talk about this a little bit?
yeah. So this one is specific for the peninsula, for Palmer, but it does kind of it gives you an idea of what deploying would look like. So when you arrive at the your departure city of departure from whether it's Christchurch in New Zealand to access McMurdo on the South Pole or Punta Arenas to go to Palmer, you go to like a clothing distribution center. And so at Palmer, they give you all of these options. For your first season, you have to take most of it, unless you get approval for your own gear. But they give you like waterproof gear. There's pants, waterproof jackets, warm clothing, boots, gloves. There's something called a Big Red, which is that red parka that you see kind of in the top right there.
Right here.
And yeah, and that's part of the issued gear. For all three stations, a lighter version is given at Palmer just as kind of a raincoat. But that's kind of like an iconic thing that everybody thinks about when they think about like polar gear.
Yeah.
And then you get like, heavy duty boots and stuff like that. But in addition to that, they do provide you a packing list. And there are some requirements of things that you have to bring, like base layers, but other stuff is just recommended. Uh, Warm socks, I would say, like good hiking boots, comfortable gear. Um, yeah, it's just more of like, what are you going to wear on a daily basis to work that's not just crazy outdoor gear?
And is there anything that you're not allowed to bring?
Yeah, I would say I mean, common sense stuff, right? Like you're traveling on commercial and military, like government planes. You are also traveling internationally, so there's restrictions for that just generally. Coming to the station though, you things that you could pick up internationally and bring down, they do limit like alcohol and alcohol consumption down there. So I think now they've limited it to like you can bring like one bottle on your person for like a lot of people get like a fancy bottle of wine for a special occasion and have like a girls' night, or midwinter dinner is a big tradition down there. Back from like 1912 when they had midwinter dinner on the expeditions. So a lot of people will bring like something celebratory for that.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And then looking back on the first season, is there anything you didn't bring with you that you wish you had? Like maybe something that you made sure that you had the next season, and or did you just feel like you were pretty prepared?
There's kind of a well-known thing that happens is that the first year you come down, generally people bring too much stuff and like too many regular clothes. And the more seasons that you do, the more like uh party gear and like costumes and onesies you bring and the less like daily clothes you bring. So
Oh,
I think my first season I wanted more like room decorations.
mm,
It's essentially like living in a dorm. During the summer you have roommates. At every station you have roommates. You have, from 1 to 4 other roommates, depending on where you are and how many years you've been doing it in your position. But everybody likes to decorate their own like beds and rooms and stuff. And I think I wanted more of that. And I brought a lot more like, you just don't know what to expect your first season. So it's easy to
right.
overdo it, I think.
And did they say you can bring 100 pounds of things, regardless of what those are? Or, I mean, like, I'm using that as an example. Or is there
Yeah.
a weight limit of what you can bring?
Yeah. So they will provide you with 2 checked bags coming down. So you get two 50-pound bags. And then when you get to like Christchurch or to Punta Arenas, depending on which station you're going to, they give you that cold weather gear. So you're allowed additional weight for that. And like that's like a carry on kind of a thing.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
if you're spending the winter at the South Pole, then you can bring a little bit more weight, just because it is longer and you do have that extra gear to take with you. Um,
Mm,
but yeah, I would say it's pretty standard like airline restrictions just for like 2 checked bags.
okay. And at any time, especially during that first season, did you say to yourself, "Oh my goodness, like what have I done?" Like it's not like you can like leave,
Hmm.
you're stuck there for quite a while. Like, did you ever think that?
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely had occasions where I was like, what have I done? um, I would say maybe not so much in my first season. It was kind of just uh, the best experiences I've ever had in my life have pretty much all been down on the ice. Best people I've met. There have been tough times, of course. It's very overwhelming and with work and just you're jumping right into it. It can be tough for some people, but I would say it was tough. The winter at the South Pole was a little bit tough. And again, it's hard to know exactly what it's going to feel like until you're doing it. Um, but no matter, well, I'll talk about that later.
Yeah, yeah. We have some more questions about that later. Okay, and so generally speaking, briefly, about how many people are at each station?
Yeah, so in the summer, the populations are higher. The weather allows for more flights. It's daylight, 24 hours. And then in the winter, depending on where you are, in the winter, it's a lower population. It's really just kind of a skeleton crew. There's not a lot of science going on. It's maintaining, like, the station, maintaining a presence, supporting, the station. And there's less flights due to the weather restrictions, essentially. So in the summer, McMurdo across the board has the highest population. It's kind of a little, like, it feels like a small town. Um, there's, a lot of different dorms and the population in the summer. There's construction going on as well. They're rebuilding like some of the buildings in the station and doing like a revamp. It's a really big project. So that has increased population as well, just for the construction. So I would say in the summer, it gets up to like 1,500 to anywhere from 15 to 1,800 people, which is quite a lot. And then at the South Pole, it's about 150, and at Palmer, it's maybe 40 or 50. And in the winter at McMurdo, when I was there, it was around 300 people. Um, it can vary depending on the year. Of course, COVID really impacted that. South Pole winter is somewhere around 40 people, and at Palmer, it was 20.
Wow. And which station do you feel like is the hardest one to endure or work out or work at? Or are they about the same?
Ooh, South Pole winter is tough. I think um it's dark for so long. Like there's a certain type of cat that really enjoys it. Like some people really thrive in that environment. I think it was hard for me because they do a lot of sensitive research there with the Auroras. So they have like photosensitive equipment on the roof of the station. And because of that, you block the windows off during the winter when it's 24 hours of darkness. So you're basically just trapped in this windowless building for like 9 months. And
Yeah.
which, yeah, and there are tough things that come up like with your family and personal stuff, but also you're working and living with the same 35, 40 people for that long. So
Right.
that
Well,
was,
that
yeah.
sort of leads into the next question. Actually, one of our viewers had the question is, how do you not go stir crazy being cooped up for that long, months and months at a time, total darkness? And how did you deal with not having sunlight for so long?
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to go stir crazy, right? Like get a little
Yeah.
cabin fever, but they usually there's always like a counselor provided. You become a very tight-knit group and family. I mean, it's a very unique experience that, few people understand. So I think there's that immediate connection to each other and everybody looks out for each other, but they always have a really good gym. Finding the motivation can be a little challenging sometimes, but I really went and made that like a priority over the winter, and I thought it made me feel better.
Yeah.
There's lots of books. They always host like themed activities, bingo night. There's karaoke. There's a really good selection of movies. and games and stuff. So like anything that you could do like at your house, you can pretty much do over there. I would say, there's some limitations, of course, and but for the lack of sunlight, they do provide those like happy lamps.
Oh, they do. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Oh, that's good.
they'll supply you with like vitamin D and stuff like that if you need it. They encourage you to take it. So like if you didn't bring your own, they'll give you some. But yeah, they have the happy lamps, and like at McMurdo, they'll build usually over the winter like a happy light room, and you can go in there and people like decorate it, and you can just like bask in it. So it's very bright though.
But is it weird keeping your circadian rhythm on point when, it's not really ever changing, light and
Yeah.
dark and like knowing like, is it 2 a.m. or 2 p.m.? Is that hard?
Oh yeah. I mean, it is hard. You lose track of time for sure. Like even in the summer. I mean, you go um when there
That's the
is
opposite, right? You have
yeah,
all light, right?
yeah, and like when the vessel is there doing like resupply, and it's a really big project. That means that we have round the clock people working like the night shift. So sometimes if you're on the night shift, especially, I mean, it's still bright outside. And the sun isn't setting, you'll go and play some games after work or go to what they call the coffee house. There's like sometimes people volunteer and do a coffee bar there and or watch a movie. And then you come out at what's supposed to be midnight and it's just like blinding. you know?
That would
So,
be weird.
yeah, but they have blackout curtains and
Yeah.
you kind of get used to it. The dark is more challenging, but it's also
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. So tell me a little bit about a day in the life on the ice. So, like, how much time does your job take, or what sort of social activities do you do?
Mhm.
What kinds of things are there to do in your downtime?
Yeah. So, I mean, you're working 54 hours a week minimum, but you wake up in the morning, you work, like a essentially 10-hour day, maybe a little less. And you have a break for lunch. And it varies depending on what job you have, but it's usually people get off around the same time at night, like 5:30, go to dinner, and then there's lounges people will host like a movie night occasionally. I was part of like a women's book club and we read books together and like met once a week to discuss it. But you can get really tired. It's hard to, especially your first season, it's hard to not want to do all the things. So taking a step back for yourself and just kind of having an open schedule is really nice, although difficult to maintain. But yeah, and then you wake up, do it again, and everybody has typically has Sundays off. Um, the galley is the kitchen, like is one exception to that because of course you have to have food every day provided. So the kitchen crew works really hard, which is also why that first season when I was a dishwasher was a lot more physically demanding, just because it's such a hard job.
Yeah. And what did you look most forward to during the season when you're working?
Yeah, I think it depends on the things I look forward to changes every year. And I've done you know different seasons at each station, so I think when you get down there, there's you at McMurdo especially are kind of like you're in a lottery system more or less for these fun little like special excursions that you can go out on. They call them boondoggles, and um, you can go. You're in the running for like if you are helping them maintain a flag line out on the ice, which is cool because then you get a leave station and go out like on the sea ice to somewhere that you wouldn't normally be able to. Or you can, get maybe like a field trip to the dry valleys, which not a lot of people have been to either. It's like field research out there. So I was really looking forward to those unique experiences that being down there would allow me to have. But I also think like every single time I go, I look forward to, yeah, something new. And I don't always know what that's going to be, but each station is so different, each season is so different that just kind of checking that off the list every time and being like, wow, this was such a unique experience, and yet I've gone down a number of years is very interesting.
Oh, that's cool. So, in the words of SpongeBob SquarePants, can you describe your best day ever there?
Yes, best day ever. It's tough because I've had so many good days.
Hard to narrow down.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
really is. I mean, I was thankfully smart enough my first season to they give you these green notebooks that you carry around, and it's good for like taking notes on your job or I mean, you can use it personally, but it's really helpful to like when you're training on something new to be able to take notes. And so that's some of the like materials that they issue to you when you arrive. And my first season, thankfully, I was smart enough to keep a running list going of like all the cool, unique experiences, mind blowing experiences that I had. And it was like, flying down on the military aircraft was amazing. And I never would have had that opportunity just for, that experience. That was cool seeing, penguins and baby molting penguins for the first time was interesting.
what
Uh,
were the penguins like, by the way? Are they social? Are they,
they are unafraid. You keep your distance, right? There's the Antarctic Treaty, and you're not allowed to
of
get
course,
10
yeah,
feet of them. So you don't disturb them, but they really are unafraid because you know people aren't hunting them. They're not learned to be afraid.
right.
Um, but they are stinky.
Stinky?
It's
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, birds. I mean, birds in general, especially
Yeah,
seabirds. But
yeah,
they're very cute, and they, for something so adorable and like that's their environment and habitat, they're so uncoordinated. So they're not meant to walk. Those flightless birds cannot walk. So it's very,
that's funny. That's funny. All right, and then the flip side, could you describe your worst day there or one
yeah.
of your worst days?
It's I would say some of the most challenging experiences I've had um, just in general, were my winter at the South Pole because um, I mean, if a number of people have had the same experience, there is a limitation to communication down there. You are so isolated, there's no flights, it's dark, but there's no like fiber optic cables that go to the South Pole. So they're reliant upon satellite passes overhead. And some, there's technical problems all the time with on our end, on someone else's end, that can disrupt that. So there's a limited amount of time that they have where that satellite is available. And for when I was there, it was more or less like 4 hours a day. There is another connection. Like there's different satellites. Some are faster, some are slower. And we share, time with the Department of Defense and government. So if there's, they prioritize it. So I would say it's challenging when you're down there, 6 months in, or in my case, I stayed for the summer as well. So now it's, 10 months in and it's dark and you're isolated and something happens at home. You get on the computer and the 4 hours a day starts at like 2 in the morning. So you have to like
Mhm.
wake up early if you want to talk to your family, or you wake up and your email popped up and you have to wait 24 hours to communicate with them. So if anything comes up personally, it can be hard to just kind of sit in limbo, and challenging. But that's where the community and the support from others comes from, and um, it can be tough to force yourself to reach out and find that support network. But people are pretty good at like noticing and picking up on that and being there for you.
Okay. Would you say that that's probably one of the hardest things to endure, or was there anything else that you found particularly difficult to endure?
I would say that's probably the hardest. Or I guess in general, being away from home, like especially if a loved one passes away, you can't do anything about it. You can't leave and be with your family.
Right.
So that's probably the hardest part is not being able to be there with like be at home. If I could teleport home, then, problem solved, but you can't. And the South Pole winter with the communications limitations, that just adds another level of um, challenge to it.
Yeah, I can see that. That would be difficult. And have to ask, what are the auroras like there? I mean, we get so lit up here the few times that we get to see it here in Washington, and it's nothing. I'm sure, like you got to see, like, what were they like? Are they just spectacular? Are
Oh
they
man,
out all the time? Or
yeah, mind blowing.
mm,
um, and it's kind of sad because you become kind of jaded to it a little bit, is at the South Pole at least. It's still so unique and beautiful at McMurdo that people really appreciate seeing them when you do, and it goes in like I think 12-year cycles of the like solar wind being more extreme and less extreme. So it depends on when you're there, but at the South Pole it's just constant. And the colors vary depending on how strong and where exactly like in the atmosphere everything's being like excited, all the electrons and stuff. So it was kind of sad. You become a little bit jaded. At least I found that to be true, where someone would be like, oh, there's auroras outside, and you go outside and you're like, yeah, it's not that like I've seen better, because it just happens so often. But
amazing.
yeah, it was just spectacular. Mm-hmm.
Well, and I would think for me, like when they were here, which was, a really big deal for me, I just wanted to stay out there for hours and just watch them. But is there a maximum amount of time that you can be outside there? I mean, you're looking at sub 100-degree temperatures, right? So
Yeah.
is there where they say don't stay outside longer than X amount of time? Does that exist?
I wouldn't say they don't put restrictions on you like that unless, there are like categories of storms essentially where they will restrict movement based on, just safety.
Yeah,
But if it's a crystal clear night and minus 100, you're welcome to stay out there as long as you want, but it, there are physical limitations to how long you can stay out there. Yeah. And
yeah,
especially just like looking up and not moving around.
right.
Bundled up. There was a night where it was the super blood moon, I think, back in
Mm,
2021. And it was pretty clear at the South Pole. And we went on the roof and we're just like kind of sitting there with all the other scientists and stuff, and talking about it. But it was so cold that like even like sitting on the roof, you can just feel the heat being sucked out of you through the layers and layers of clothing. So
wow.
I think I was only outside for like 10 minutes, but yeah, I mean you can go on a walk around the flag lines and stuff into other outbuildings for sure, but it's hard.
Yeah, I'll bet. All right, so moving on, one of our viewers is a ham radio operator, and he said that he's contacted the research center there, using high frequency radio, and talked to some ham radio groups there, that have they I guess they go down there in that area, to activate remote islands for radio awards, and so he wants to know, have you ever needed to use amateur radio while you were there?
No, that I mean that used to be the means of communication down there. Um,
Cool.
so yeah, I mean like back in the 50s and stuff, they would use radios to try and contact like the government and the United States and stuff. But we have ham radio stations. To be an operator, you have to be certified. And I would say that becomes increasingly rare for people to be certified in that. It's kind of an older hobby.
Yeah, yeah,
Though I did have an interest in doing it because I thought it would be so cool to contact like the space station. Um,
right.
so there was my first summer, there was a guy who was certified, and he told me an interesting story that he used the ham radio, and for our satellite was, I think, out of position a little bit. They couldn't realign it. It was something about it was broken. So somehow we were able to pick up at the South Pole, not very consistently, but somehow we were able to pick up radio communications from like North Korea. And so he was able to tune in to North Korean radio, which was so interesting to hear. Um,
Mm.
and he told me at one point in time he contacted them because there is that thing that ham radio operators will do to contact other stations. And I don't know exactly what it is, but you tell them something that you've
Yeah.
heard, and then they'll send you something back as a response. Uh,
Oh, I see.
and he made contact with some North Korean radio station, and they sent him like a newspaper. And I told him, I was like, man, you have to be on every FBI watch list. Now that you've been to Antarctica, you're an Australian citizen, you talk to North Korean radio stations, like you've just checked it all off. So,
That's
but I
funny.
would love to learn.
Yeah, okay, cool. All right, so tell me about the polar plunge that you did there. Now, do you have a higher tolerance for cold? And I mean, I swim in the Sound and it's cold, but the coldest ambient temperature I've ever swam in is 32 degrees, I believe. And well, maybe slightly less, but not much. But
Yeah.
you're talking about sub-zero, way sub-zero temperatures and freezing water. Like, what was
Yeah.
that like?
Yeah. I mean, the water temperature, I mean, you would think at a certain point, and same with air temperature, you would think at a certain point, like cold is cold, but it's so not true. I mean, you notice a difference between like
Oh, yeah.
the Puget Sound, 50 degrees or 60 degrees, and
Yeah.
yeah. So, um, they used to
Like
do polar,
needles going into your skin, right? I mean, that's how
it's,
it feels
yeah,
when it's really cold.
yeah. And like, it's, I made the mistake of that you can, they used to do polar plunges at McMurdo, and they don't do it anymore because of safety. So that's not allowed at Palmer, though. You are able to. It's a smaller community. They have like a boat ramp and stuff like that, and the doctor will stand there, watch you do it. There's someone ready and waiting with like a life preserver if you need it. And it's kind of there. It's kind of a tradition. The water is very cold, and it can, it's below freezing just because of the salinity of it. But
Right, of course.
um, yeah, I did it once, and I thought that was fine. So I've
And
done
but
it.
you're in and out there. You're not hanging out in there. It's a
Yeah,
it's a plunge in and out. Yeah.
yeah, and I think I was going to say this earlier. I made a mistake of um, walking in the boat ramp down because I was like, I don't want to jump in. I don't like swimming in open water, anyways. But it
Yeah.
just that's instant just like shock. So I was like, oh, I'll ease my way in, but the water is so cold that your feet get numb, and it's just so much more time spent in the water when you walk in that I found it hard to put socks on afterwards because my feet hurt so bad. So,
Oh, wow. I
but you
bet.
you immediately get warm and you warm up and like take a hot shower
Yeah.
and stuff. But yeah,
Oh,
once was
awesome.
fine.
I can understand that. All right, so let's briefly talk about the difference between the three stations. You've got McMurdo, Palmer, and the South Pole. Like, what are the biggest differences between the three, and which one did you like better and why?
Um, I mean, I would say the biggest differences aside from population are and location are just like the things that they focus on. Each one allows for and specializes in different research. The South Pole is, you know, essentially a desert. There's no open water, there's no access to the ocean. So a lot of the research they do is they do neutrino research, where they drill, deep down into the ice and put these domes. And then they also do the aurora research there. They have the cleanest air on the planet. So there's like, it's divided in almost like a pie chart at the South Pole. There's the quiet sector where you don't have radio interference. There's the telescopes. There's a clean air sector where NOAA does a lot of like, air research, and atmospheric research. Um, and the dark sector where there's the auroras and stuff going on. So
Yeah.
that's at the South Pole. At McMurdo, they have there's wildlife. There's a lot of like seal research that's done there. They also have a lot of like field camps, and they'll do various things with like I said, the dry valleys and geological research. They have divers that go down, um, and then at Palmer, it's outside the Antarctic Circle, so it's a lot more moderate of a climate. I would say the coldest I got my winter was 4 or 5 degrees Fahrenheit. Generally, it was around 20-ish, 20 degrees. So, and it's not dark 24/7 there. So, they do a lot of, and it's on a smaller island. So they do a lot of like bird research. They go out to different islands nearby. There's a lot of islands around. Um, they study seals, they study penguins, but I would say a lot, and they have the access to Palmer is on a or was on a research vessel, so they would do, along the way there would be like oceanographic studies done as well. So that's probably the biggest difference is the things that they are capable of doing at each station just based on where they geologically are like located.
Okay, well, and you mentioned that Palmer has the tradition of the polar plunge. Are there any experiences or traditions unique to the South Pole?
There are, yeah, I mean, one funny thing they do is like at the beginning of winter when the last flight leaves, you're locked down for winter. They watch the thing and there's like a gymnasium, they project movies and there's kind of a movie marathon and it's this winter tradition of watching the thing and watching The Shining and as kind of like a welcome to winter. So that's always fun. There's very interesting, specific, like South Pole, things that I'll just kind of leave a mystery. But, there's a lot that's unique to the South Pole. They have the old station was kind of a covered dome, and with the blowing snow and stuff, it just kind of gets buried every year. So they built a new station, but there are remnants of the old one, and there's kind of these ice tunnels below the
Hmm.
station and within them there's people put interesting things in there, so there's almost like little displays or shrines, but those are kind of cool.
Okay, cool. So one of our viewers wanted to know, I'm going to share my screen here and bring up this photo. She wanted to know if you could explain what the sign means here, what the geographic South Pole is, and what does this quote here mean, where it says the pole, yes, but under very different circumstances from what we expected.
Yeah, so there's a few south poles. There's the magnetic south pole, geographic south pole. um I think there's South Pole of inaccessibility. Each one is different. The geographic South Pole is exactly what it sounds like. Geographically, it's the exact southern point on the globe. And then there's like the ceremonial South Pole is the thing that people think of with the like little cute little striped pole, all the flags of all the countries that signed the treaty. Um, but yeah, I'm standing at the geographic South Pole in this one. My first season, I made it down there. And that quote is from the Robert F. Scott, like the first, so they thought the first expedition to the South Pole. They were basically similar to the space race, right? It was this race to the South Pole back in like 1912. And on their expedition, it turned out to be a lot more tough than they expected. And when they arrived at the South Pole, they were disappointed that Roald Amundsen, excuse me, had beaten them by I think it was about a month. So that was a bit disappointing. I think they referred to it as a barren wasteland. So, and it was basically just a death march. So, um, yeah, a lot
They
of
all
death
just died.
and tough weather and unexpected difficulties reaching the South Pole.
Interesting. Okay, well,
Mm-hmm.
thank you for clearing that up. Real quick, I wanted to ask you a little bit about it. I know you're in Antarctica during COVID, which had to have been a unique experience. And were you kind of glad to not be here in the chaos of the rest of the world because you were kind of isolated? I mean, you didn't certainly have to do the social distancing and things that we did, right? Because you didn't have any chance of having it there, right?
Yeah, so I was definitely very thankful to be gone and like isolated during COVID. It was a weird experience though, like reintegrating back home. Because it was still COVID, but things had started to open up a little bit. And in my mind, it's basically kind of like I pressed pause and then I came back. And at least in Seattle, like it was a lot more relaxed, but I was still in that mindset of, oh my gosh, like, COVID's big and scary. So,
Yeah.
but the Antarctic program was really good about, um, they during the PQ process, it was a lot more intense to make sure that you were physically capable of deploying with that high risk. We, I probably did more COVID tests than anybody else I know outside the program. Um, they test you and test you and test you. We isolated in San Francisco, like en route, and uh, did more tests. Flew. They got a private, like chartered flight for us. All the countries were shut off from travel, and I was flying to New Zealand, and the government's had this deal worked out because they have to maintain the Antarctic program. So we got to New Zealand, and then we did um, another 2 weeks of isolation there, and the 2 weeks of the isolation for like entering New Zealand, anyways. So in total, my cohort that went down, it ended up being like 43 days of isolation, like in hotel rooms and stuff, which was a lot. And the population was really small. Um, it was way scaled back. So, but once you get through all of that stuff, initially it was, we arrived at the South Pole. We'd all been in this bubble of isolation together. We were sure there was no COVID on station. And then it was just life as normal because there was nothing like coming in or going out really. So that was nice. It was, kind of what I was saying earlier, difficult to be there when things back home were, it was tumultuous, and you have no control over anything, and you can't help people. So,
Yeah.
but being in that situation was kind of nice because we just had regular lives, and yeah.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. Well, and so what is medical care like there? Are there some medical conditions when you get there, when you find some medical conditions that might crop up that is something that's sort of unique to being in Antarctica, aside from frostbite and stuff like that? And like what would happen if somebody got really injured or got really, really sick and you can't fly out? I mean, do they have doctors there? Do they have what kind of accommodations do they have for unexpected things like that?
Yeah, I mean, anything and everything always happens. They try their best to prevent it, but accidents happen and medical conditions pop up. I would say, um, there was a challenge. One of my friends is a type 1 diabetic, and it was a challenge for her to just be accepted into the program because you know they didn't want her to go down just because you are so high risk, right? But she successfully made it down there, and um, her name is Rachel Heckerman. She talks about it online all the time, and it's like I can't imagine being in that situation, but she successfully navigated it and learned a lot about dealing even with diabetes in that environment. But there are like things that pop up that do warrant medevacs, and they happen all the time. Obviously, more often in the summer when there's already flights coming down. Medical care there's always doctors and like or physicians assistants and nurses on staff. They have a clinic that you can go to, of course, free of charge when you're living there, and it's they have good access to stuff. Sometimes it's hard to have the most up to date stuff, but like they're able to do X-rays, basic care. They can do basic tests and testing. At McMurdo, they can do a little bit more involved stuff and send you, back to New Zealand if they have to for further testing or CT scans or surgery or whatever. If you break, there was a guy who broke his wrist one year, and decided to stick it out. And then when he got back to New Zealand, he had to get it rebroken in surgery. So
Ooh, that sounds
this, you know,
terrible.
is there is a certain risk of going down there that, especially in the winter, that you might not have a flight soon enough. So, which is why they're
Right.
so thorough. It could
Yeah.
take, you know, up to a month to get back to civilization.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
yeah.
Interesting. All right. Well, let's talk about food there. What's the food like there, and are there cocktails?
The food is actually pretty good. It's in my opinion, the smaller the station is, the better the food because it's just hard to cook for, you know, 1,500 people.
Yeah.
As opposed to my winter at both the South Pole and at Palmer. Um, Shout out to Mark. Yeah, I've been really lucky to have great experiences and great chefs. And I think just to get down there is says something about maybe your qualifications for cooking. Like if tip like in general, if people don't like your food or you do a bad job, you're not going to last, right? So,
Right.
um, but the food there is for the most part you're going to be served kind of like just a bunch of frozen food because they're able to sustain it. You know, the fresh food lasts as long as it can last until the flights stop coming in, and then there's no more food deliveries, right? And then it's they try to make it last, especially like the eggs and stuff, but they're called freshies and lettuce and you know berries and tomatoes and potatoes and onions. That's I mean it runs out at some point, and then you have frozen vegetables and but they get really creative. They do a great job, and I've always had a great time. I'm vegetarian, and I on the smaller stations I kind of feel like I have a private chef because I'm in the minority. So usually I can request they'll take requests and feedback, and yeah, I've really enjoyed it.
Wow. That's great. And so here's, I think everybody wants to know what dating is like there. Is there dating? What's the social life like?
Oh,
Is
and
it?
cocktails. I forgot to
Oh yeah,
mention.
cocktails. Well, cocktails
Most
might go along
importantly,
with dating. So let's.
yeah. Um, so I mean, it their alcohol policy has changed over the years, and you know, with different contractors, it's changed, of course. But as of right now, it is beer and wine only, um, and but you're working so much and so hard that it is nice to sit and relax. But like, if you drink heavily, it's just going to be exhausting. So
Yeah.
there's like a ration system, and people are pretty good about it. But yeah, there's a good social circle there at all the stations, and um, with dating, I mean, it's like it really is like at any other job.
Mm.
You live and work with these people and you're just dating your coworkers, so you just have to be smart about it because you are there with them no matter what. So
Yep. You can't leave. And so what about crime? Like, if there are some cocktails, sometimes that leads to people getting out of control, but maybe they're not allowed to drink enough to get to that point. And but is there a jail? I mean, do you ever have instances of like people getting, out of control or doing something wrong?
I mean, sure, yeah, there's always the chance for that to happen. I'm sure and it has happened in the past. The program like takes that very seriously, so you know, there are counselors to talk to. You can talk to your boss, you can talk to your friends and the station manager, and they'll deal with it. And like um yeah, if the need arises, they will isolate people until they can basically fire them and send them out. um but there, I wouldn't say there's a jail. but
Yeah.
but
Okay.
yeah, and it is such a tight knit community, and you have such a good like support system there that it's not often that something like super intense will happen like that.
And so were you ever at any point, did you ever feel in fear of your safety?
Environmentally, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. I
But
wouldn't say
otherwise, like somebody hurting you on purpose or something like that.
no. I mean, like in yeah, you go through like a psychological exam for winters and stuff, and again, the community support is great, so they do a good job of preventing that. I've never been like in fear for my safety now.
Okay, that's good. And what things that we maybe take for granted here might not work at all there? Like, is there like do phones work normally? Is there
Yeah,
anything that you can think of that doesn't work there that we use every day here?
the internet.
Oh yeah, that
I would
makes
say,
sense.
yeah. So they've transitioned in and out of using Starlink and otherwise, they tell you to expect like dial up essentially. So it's that slow. It can be that slow, or your allocated like amount of internet is limited. It can be anywhere from 2.5 gigabytes to 5 gigabytes a week, which goes very fast. If you think about like your friends and family sending you pictures, you sending pictures, or browsing the
Yeah.
internet, watching videos, there's really no streaming capable. Um,
Mm,
yeah, so and of course at the South Pole, like with the satellite connections, it's even more limited. So that for sure is something different. Um, I mean, being down there and being so isolated, it's something that I missed was like the option to choose. Like, I want to go out for Mexican food for dinner. I wanted it so bad, and like,
yeah,
you don't decide the galley schedule or like what's for dinner that
yeah.
night. So, the freedom of choice in every aspect, I think, is a little more limited down there.
Yeah, that makes sense. And did you like have any trouble or a hard time getting back to normal life, like adapting to that, getting back to the States or wherever you went, like when you're not on the ice, is it weird or does it feel hard to get back normalized?
Um, I would say the hardest adjustment is probably like going from such an isolated, low population to a giant city and lots of noise and chaos. Um, yeah, that's always kind of it's almost a bit of culture shock in a way. And I think that kind of everybody experiences that to some extent down there.
Yeah, that makes sense. And what would you say if you could narrow it down? What would you say is the biggest lesson that you've learned from living on the ice?
Um, Man, I would almost say like whatever challenges arise, I feel like somebody has experienced that. Like you're definitely
Hmm.
not alone, and it can uh especially in the winter kind of sometimes be hard to see a light at the end of the tunnel. But yeah, just knowing that this is not necessarily a unique experience to you. Anything that you think could happen has probably happened. But yeah, it's a challenge to not like just dig yourself in a little hole of depression sometimes. But
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I see. And so do you think you're going to be going back or are you done or what's next for you?
The door's always open. I don't know. I
Yeah.
mean, if people always say like, "Oh, okay, I'm done this time for sure," and then 2 years later, there they are again. So like, I never
Yeah.
say never.
Yeah.
I'll be going back for a just a short deployment this time to help with like the big resupply mission vessel operations. So that's just a fairly short contract, but I don't know. Yeah, I'm never shutting the door. I'd say I'm open to new opportunities and experiences now. Kind of looking to establish myself maybe elsewhere, but you never know.
Oh, that's a great attitude to have, open to all things. And what advice would you have for anyone considering this kind of an adventure?
Oh, it's great. I love it so much, and I don't think I think um, yeah, it just opens a lot more doors than you would expect, and um, there's so many cool experiences that are to be had, and it's not easy. It's a lot of hard work, but you never know until you try. So definitely try. Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. Is there anything else that we haven't covered that you maybe want to talk about?
Well, at the end of the season, it's kind of fun. I think you have to spend a minimum of 10 days down there now. It used to be a lot longer. I think it used to be a month. But they award you like a civilian medal for Antarctic service, which is
Oh,
kind
we
of
have it.
cool.
I have a picture of that. Let me share that. All right.
And yeah, so
And so you
there's
obviously have one of these.
I do, yeah, it's very cool. With it comes with a little certificate and a pin, and then there's a winter over bar that you can get. And there's three different colors. There's gold, bronze, and silver. And it's I want
Do
to
they
say
mean do they mean different things or you're choosing a color?
first, second, and third time. And then
Oh,
same for the winter over for second and third time, and the colors are associated with that. It's not bronze, silver, and gold like you would imagine. I think it's Gosh, it might be on this website here. It's not, but uh, it's testing my memory. But I think that you're awarded gold the first time, then bronze, then silver.
oh.
But yeah, I remember it being out of order. It might maybe be bronze first, but um, yeah,
Hmm.
they're very cool. It's kind of a nice little collector's memento of being down there and interesting.
Proof that you were there.
Yeah, proof that you were there, exactly. Because you're not allowed to like take things from there, right? Like it's um protected just specifically for like research and environmental stuff, and that's one of the few things that you're able to have from your experience.
Right. Right, of course. All
Yeah.
right. Well, if you don't have anything to add, I think that concludes our questions. I am gonna, for anybody who's interested, I'm gonna in the description, I'm gonna put a link of this website. So if you're interested in seeing like what is the packing list, and let me tell you, I glanced at it and it's pretty extensive. So lots of things to consider. It has participant, things, things that you'd want to keep in mind and things. So did you have anything to add?
I don't think so. That website is pretty interesting. And it's all just like public information through the NSF and the Antarctic program. So it's pretty interesting to browse. Um,
Awesome.
yeah.
Well, I thank you so much for taking the time to spend with us today. This has been fascinating for me. I've long wanted to ask you all these questions, but I know you're such a busy girl, you're hard to catch up with.
Yeah, thank you
Um,
so much. That was wonderful.
yeah, this is really great. So thank you so much for hanging out with us today. So that's going to wrap it up for another edition of Cat Chat. Be sure to like and subscribe again. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you all have an amazing day. You know you deserve it. Mwah.